Alright, so there's this recent video that has kind of blown up that has been brought to my attention by hairguard, which essentially goes over everything that has to do with hair loss. And somebody in my comments told me that I should react to this because I could apparently add a lot to this with my unique perspective, and he wasn't wrong. So I watched the entirety of it beforehand. This is not a live reaction or anything. And I decided to skip forward to the hair loss cascade. So, if some of you remember watching my hair loss is unnatural video, I explained what I believe to be the chain of effect of hair loss, the equation of hair loss, that's how I put it, right? And essentially, what hairguard has done is a very, very similar model that we're going to take a look now, and I'll tell you exactly what I agree on, what I disagree on, all things of that nature. Alright, let's jump into it.
Information comes from the scalp compression. Okay, let's go over to this next important step. So the hair loss cascade. This is super, super important. If you really want to understand hair loss, what's causing your hair loss at a deep level, then you need to understand the hair loss cascade. So step number one, or the first thing, the root cause is the scalp tension, right? The scalp tension leads to...
No. So this is probably my biggest fundamental disagreement with hairguard, because scalp tension, when it comes to me, so scalp tightness, the calcification of the scalp, basically when the scalp gets so tense that essentially there is no more blood flow, no more nutrients that can really access your follicular cells, and that's what causes hair loss. So in my model, it is inflammation, scalp inflammation, the first thing which leads to the mobilization of DHT to the scalp as an antioxidant, and for the people who are genetically sensitive to this heightened androgenic activity in the scalp, that leads to the scalp tightness. And then, nutrient depletion, the hair follicles are starving, and then you lose your hair, right? Now, the reason why hairguard's model doesn't really work here is because, well, what causes the scalp tension exactly? Some people have end scalps and some people don't. It just doesn't really make any sense, right? Like at this point, if you have the scalp tension, then automatically you're losing your hair, right?
Scalp compression. And some areas of the scalp are compressed more than others. This compression leads to scalp inflammation. And in the presence of DHT, we get basically transforming growth factor beta-1 present. And this transforming growth factor beta-1 leads to fibrosis. Fibrosis, scar tissue formation in response to that chronic inflammation, right?
Yeah, so he's got like a more detailed version, really. Like my model here, for example, it's a very simplified version. But scar tissue formation is not in response to chronic inflammation, it's in response to nutrient deprivation, right? When there's no more blood coming to supply the hair follicles, to supply the scalp, then by definition you're going to develop scar tissue. The inflammation starts at the very, very beginning, right?
Because of this fibrosis, and the compression, it leads to the scalp layer becoming thin, hard, and stiff.
That's
and
the same
really
thing.
Importantly, also it loses its layered structure. And that's exactly what we see in balding scalps. We see that they are thinner, they're harder, they're stiffer, and they've lost that layered structure, the reduced growth space. So supplements, collagen, diet, stuff like that. I really like doing this stuff because it's going to improve your, other aspects of your health anyway. You should be taking good supplements, should be taking collagen, improving your diet, right? But that basically, it just gives the hair follicles that little extra boost, right? It's not really going to make a massive difference. And that's what we see. That's what we see, right?
Well, it's going to make a difference if you don't have scalp tension. Because, well, if the blood flow, if you've essentially supercharged your blood supply with powerful nutrition, then that's only really going to matter if the blood can reach the hair follicles, if the blood can reach the very top of your scalp. But if it's already become scar tissue, or it's way too tight to allow for proper blood circulation, then it doesn't matter as much, right? However, if we can remove scalp inflammation, which removes excess androgenic activity, which in some people who are genetically sensitive to it causes the scalp tightness, then the nutrition really plays a role. Also, the nutrition gets rid of scalp inflammation, which leads to scalp tightness to begin with. There are many different factors that can contribute to scalp inflammation, and a horrible diet is one of them, right? So in a sense, when you've got really good nutrition, you can both get rid of the scalp inflammation, or at least a part of it, but also supply the growth of your hair at the same time. So there are things that reduce scalp inflammation, and there are things that just purely increase the growth of your hair, right? And these things work synergistically, and diet is something that works on both fronts, right?
Supplements, yeah, it kind of helped, a little bit helped, but it didn't really stop the hair loss.
Most supplements are trash.
So think about it on the hair loss cascade.
Some of
so
them
moving
are good,
up
though.
The hair loss cascade, you have slightly more effective treatments, right? Minoxidil improves blood flow. Red light therapy, LLT, improves blood.
So I'm kind of tired of people mentioning minoxidil, because it's like it's already been debunked that rosemary oil is better than minoxidil. Are we just gonna ignore the study that shows us clearly that 1% rosemary oil is superior to 2% minoxidil, and you can just use 5% rosemary oil, 10% rosemary oil, and that makes up the difference, and that leads to way superior results? Combine that with peppermint oil, combine that with castor oil, and you've got a combo that's way better than minoxidil without any of the shitty trash side effects. Remember, minoxidil was prescribed as a blood pressure medication originally, which failed, but then they noticed some good results on hair, so they started prescribing it to people for that. And a lot of people get heart palpitations, a bunch of crap from it, okay? Just because you don't feel the side effects yet doesn't mean that something in your body isn't building up for a disastrous outcome later on. So, yeah, there's no reason to take minoxidil at all.
Blood flow. Topical caffeine improves blood flow. PRP.
Red light therapy is pretty good. Like improving the mitochondrial function in your follicular cells, which in turn will extend the length of your hair cycle, because all of it is based on the mitochondrial efficiency of your follicular cells, which is impacted by a bunch of things, but especially exposure to red light can really enhance that. So, yeah.
Improves the blood flow, right? And that's exactly what we see. These are slightly more effective than this one. Then moving up, we have microneedling. So microneedling works because it heals that scar tissue, right? It helps reduce the fibrosis. And PRP, same effect to a similar extent, right?
Yeah, microneedling is pretty good, but a lot of people are pussies about it. Like, what do you mean you do it once every 2 weeks? I know you should be derma stamping your scalp twice a week, every 3 days. And if anything, you could even do it every other day. Your scalp adapts. It's kind of like building muscle. Over time, you regenerate way quicker, especially if you eat the right diet, especially if your scalp gets enough sunlight, which actually helps the regeneration process. You're consuming a lot of healthy fats, proteins, collagen, etc. So this gives you a lot more windows to microneedle, and on top of that, mix it with the castor, rosemary, peppermint combo every other day if you really want to be crazy about hair regrowth, and that's gonna yield fantastic results. Now, every other day is a bit extreme. I would suggest for most people it should be once to twice a week being the higher end. But honestly, once your scalp really gets used to microneedling, every other day works pretty well. A lot of people are afraid of doing that because they've heard bullshit from their dermatologist, or like they're scared of irritating their scalp by high concentrations of essential oils. But bro, that irritation is exactly what triggers the blood flow to rush to your scalp in abundance. It doesn't hurt you, okay? 10% concentrations are not gonna kill you, right? That they're just going to enhance the effect. They simply allow you to get a lot more of those essential oils. We're basically getting to the peak and just before the diminishing returns, right? So that's the thing. These techniques do work, but people are too scared to increase the intensity, right?
It helps with fibrosis. And that's why microneedling is more effective than, say, red light. which is more effective than, say, a supplement. Then moving up, we have DHT blockers, right? Finasteride, dutasteride, saw palmetto. These are the most effective.
Even though I'm very much in favor of the natural way, I think saw palmetto is dog shit. It doesn't address the root cause. And also, a lot of people have reported side effects from saw palmetto with minimal gains of hair. It's kind of like, if you want to go the whole DHT blocking route, which is terrible, by the way, anybody who says that DHT is a trash hormone that does absolutely nothing after puberty is completely and utterly full of shit. So yeah, if you want to go this route, at that point, just take finasteride, right? Like, saw palmetto is one of the lowest IQ, like, natural remedies that you can find, right? So definitely don't think that's necessary, because DHT is only a messenger. It's only caused by the scalp inflammation, right? I've already talked about this in my other videos, but yeah.
Because they're further up the hair loss cascade, right? They stop the DHT, and that stops everything going down. But these don't really regrow much hair.
That's
and
true.
They also,
a lot of people think that finasteride or dutasteride is like this miracle drug, but the hyper-responders are quite rare. You know, most people, they're just able to barely stop it, and that's it. And the reason why a lot of people don't get the results that they should from those drugs is because they didn't fix the root cause. Their diet is shit, their habits are shit, they're not getting enough sunlight, they're not, they're still using shampoo. One of the biggest things that causes scalp inflammation is chronic hair product usage, right? There's a reason why there's a shit ton of homeless people running around with these amazing full heads of hair that defy any kind of logic because they're supposed to be malnourished. It's because they don't destroy their hair with unfiltered, contaminated water and toxic hair products, right?
So mess with your hormones. So you can see this decreasing effectiveness of treatments as you go down the hair loss cascade. So hopefully that's all starting to make sense.
hairguard's thesis doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me, because it's like, how does it start with scalp tension? The scalp tension is what leads to the blood not being able to reach the follicles, which is what causes hair loss, right? But what hairguard is basically telling you is that some people get scalp tension and some people don't. That doesn't really make any sense, right? Because if we go back to his whole equation, if scalp tension is occurring, then you're already losing hair. So in that case, judging by this model, finasteride, dutasteride shouldn't even work, because scalp tension logically leads directly to all these different things he talked about, which are like compression and then loss of blood flow, fibrosis. Fibrosis comes directly after tension and compression, right? Like, how could those things cause scalp inflammation when scalp inflammation is caused by gut inflammation, by systemic inflammation, and also by the relentless abuse that people put on their hair every single day with the toxic products, right? That is what causes scalp inflammation. And also nutritional deficiencies, lack of sun, a bunch of different things that I talk about. But yeah, it's the inflammation that leads to the androgenic activity. And then you get the tension, then you get the rest of the cascade, right?
Hopefully that's all starting to make sense. So let's go on to the next section. How do you actually fix the root cause, right? How do you right now actually start stopping the hair loss and regrowing your hair? Well, let's go through, because there's 4 main steps. So the first and obviously most important step is that you need to reduce this chronic tension, which takes place through the muscles holding the galea. We've already gone through that study where they reduced that muscular tension and the hair started regrowing.
Again, the tension is a result of pre-existing inflammation, right? Like, animals in the wild that live in their natural environment, that eat their natural diets, that are living in accordance to what they have been made to do, they don't lose hair prematurely, right? They don't lose their hair early like humans do relative to their lifespan, right? The only animals that actually do are animals that are put in zoos, and the zookeepers fail to recreate the natural environment of these animals. And us as humans, we are the zoo animals, basically. This is why we lose our hair, right? It's not because we don't do scalp massages, which they do work, I do recommend people to massage their scalp. It does actually help alleviate tension, but it's not a scalp massage deficiency that causes hair loss, is what I'm saying, right?
Although we don't know exactly why the muscles become chronically tight, it's obviously related to genetics and somewhat to diet and lifestyle.
See, that's right there. This right there basically undoes his entire thesis. He talked about diet and lifestyle way at the end of his hair loss equation. So he says it's related to genetics and diet/lifestyle. Well, then it doesn't start with the tension, does it? It starts with the diet, with the lifestyle. And how does the diet and the lifestyle and everything cause the scalp tension? Well, the diet and the lifestyle cause scalp inflammation. And that is a definite fact, right? Scalp inflammation is caused by being unhealthy and by constantly blasting your scalp with all these chemicals, right? This is what causes scalp inflammation. And it's the scalp inflammation that leads to the scalp that's chronically tight. He literally just admitted it there. He literally just contradicted his hair loss equation and confirmed mine. Scalp inflammation. What causes scalp inflammation? Vitamin mineral deficiencies, blah, 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 hair product usage, heavy metal toxicity, which he doesn't talk about. He doesn't talk about hair product usage either. Cortisol, oxidative stress, etc. All of these different things are what cause the inflammation, which mobilizes DHT, and it's only in people who are genetically sensitive to DHT that it leads to scalp tension, to scalp tightness. And as soon as you have scalp tension, that's when everything starts degenerating very quickly, right? Now, if here you can stop the scalp tightness with something like Botox injections or whatever, then you're able to stop the rest of the cascade, but it doesn't start with this, right? Whereas his model, for some reason, you have scalp tension at the beginning, and then scalp compression, and then you have like, oh, the inflammation, the DHT and whatever, and then at the end, you've got the byproducts of the tension, which is restricted blood flow and the death of the hair follicles and the scarification. But that happens as a result of the tension, and the other stuff comes before the scalp tension. I hope I'm making a lot of sense to you here. And by the way, I've got nothing against hairguard. I think he does fantastic work. I've seen some of his other videos as well. But at the same time, this gives me an opportunity to talk about my model and why I believe that my equation makes a lot more sense. But by no means do I hate the guy. I think he's doing great work overall.
Your first line of defense against hair loss should be to reduce the chronic tension in the scalp so it isn't being compressed so aggressively.
But yeah, like I said, you have to reduce the scalp inflammation before in order to prevent that from happening. Like, sure, you can do scalp massages and whatever, that's fine, but it's much better to get to the root cause, to what actually precedes scalp tension in the equation.
Step 3 is block DHT. Remember that hair loss cascade? We have DHT.
So this guy's kind of in between. He's like, that's optional. He believes that you can do it naturally, but at the same time, he thinks that blocking DHT can help. And that's where we disagree, because I think that blocking DHT is unnecessary. Like, if DHT was truly the root cause, then men age 60, 70 with like very, very low amounts of DHT in their blood, they would regrow all of their hair essentially, right? But what we see is that the hair loss only gets worse as men age, as men physically degenerate, right? Because hair is nothing more than the manifestation of accelerated physical degeneration. So while blocking DHT, like completely getting rid of the majority of it, does work, there are side effects. A lot of people are trying to dodge them and say, oh, but it works for me, whatever. My main take is that if you're gonna take 5-AR inhibitors, just get on steroids, just live the enhanced lifestyle at this point, just kind of commit to turning yourself into a pharmacy, because otherwise you're gonna have a lot of issues. As a matter of fact, DHT actually aids in hair growth. It's just that it's the excess androgenic activity in an inflamed scalp that leads to the tension and to the hair loss to people that are genetically sensitive to it, right?
So Step 4, improve the blood flow, right? This is the last step, and this is more about reactivating the dormant hair follicles. It's about
things like Minoxidil, we've already covered that. Red light therapy doesn't really work through the blood flow pathway. Like, it's more of a increasing the cellular efficiency, the efficiency of your follicular cells via improving its mitochondria. It's not really that much about blood flow. So caffeine, it's pretty good too. But again, how are you not going to talk about rosemary plus peppermint oil? Like, you're going to talk about topical caffeine, but you're not going to talk about the best essential oils, especially when you combine them with castor oil, which also has amazing benefits for your hair. They don't fix the root cause. They don't. That's true. Improving blood flow doesn't fix the root cause. However, it does help in bypassing it, in a sense that we want to think about it like defense and attack, right? So we've got things that reduce scalp inflammation, that reduce scalp tension, and we've got things that increase hair growth, increase blood flow delivery, basically supercharges your hair growth cycle so that given the right conditions, your hair can grow as fast as humanly possible. And even if the conditions are not perfect, it's like all of these attacks that you are putting through are compensating for the lack of defense, you know? So a lot of things that I talk about, like the hair masks, plus microneedling, plus the oiling and everything, that's all on the offensive side, right? However, you also want to couple that with proper defense. But even if your defense is not perfect, increasing the growth efficiency of your hair as much as possible can compensate for that in some cases. But obviously, you can't have a scalp that is completely tight and cannot receive nutrients, right? You need to alleviate enough inflammation to allow nutrient delivery.
This is going to help everything else make a lot of sense.
Oh yeah, this is a schizo part of the video. Actually, my favorite.
So the hair loss industry does not want this information out.
His information is incomplete, but in general, of course, the hair loss industry doesn't want anybody to know how to actually reverse it naturally, because that kind of information can, if spread out more, yeah, it's going to make them lose billions and billions of dollars, obviously.
Just being bluntly honest, the hair loss industry doesn't want this information out. If you spend any time looking into the medical industry, you'll know that the real bucks, the real money is made through prescriptions and subscriptions, right? This idea I talked about at the start of the presentation, a customer for life, is where the real money is made. The hair loss industry wants to be billing you every single month, to be honest. Like, really, really try and understand this reality. The hair loss industry has zero intention to fix the root cause of your hair loss, because it would simply just kill their business models dead, right?
And the thing is, those drugs are designed for you to need to take them for the rest of your life, right? Whereas if you fix things from the inside out and you do the correct habits, there are certain things that you can only do for a period of time and then be okay. Even me, when implementing my own hair maxing protocol, there are periods in which I did it a lot more religiously, just kind of took every single bottleneck, every single factor, and went fully all in for a period of a few months. And that's when I experienced the most amount of regrowth. But then I went back down to maintenance. It's like, okay, let's kind of take out some of these more like intensive things that I have to be consistent with and sort of stick to the more simpler stuff. And I was able to still regrow hair and keep my gains, right? That's the thing. Whereas if you do finasteride, minoxidil, whatever, you are on that shit for life. You're going to lose everything as soon as you quit it, right? And that's why those drugs are heavily pushed. And that's why dermatologists, whenever they come across any kind of information that goes against their paradigm, that goes against selling those drugs, they are programmed to go heavily against it and to shield their product as much as humanly possible. Same thing for shampoo, which, you know, brings them even more customer because it's one of the main causes of scalp inflammation. Like, bro, I still can't believe that people have to be told that a toxic substance that you can't ingest, if you put that on your scalp, that's going to destroy your hair. Like, I don't know, man. The whole thing about shampoo, no shampoo, whatever, it just seems so surface level and easy. Like, even this guy, even a lot of these hair loss YouTubers, whatever, they don't understand that hair product usage is literally causing them hair loss. Like, holy fuck.
They want to bill your credit card every single month up until you just finally say enough is enough. I'm wondering if I should actually release it. All right.
Oh yeah, this
I've
is the really good part.
personally threatened in the past when I talked about this topic before, because it simply exposes an entire industry built around profit and MRR.
Yeah.
It's not built around what's actually best for the individual long term.
Well, no.
Right. So I've received emails.
As a tangent, that's how the entire medical system is designed, right? Like, the whole idea is not to fix the root cause. The whole idea is not to fix the problem, is to have a customer for life. Otherwise, they would all go out of business, right? That's why, like, for example, I'm sure you guys have seen the MIT surgeon video, right? I can just get rid of this now. MIT surgeon, right? Like, this guy essentially exposed the entire scam, where basically he was a neurosurgeon mainly performing spine surgery for patients, and what he noticed is that what he was doing was completely and utterly unnecessary, and that many patients, the patients that healed, were the ones that implemented correct habits such as diet, exercise, whatever, and the patients that kept coming back for additional surgeries were the ones that never actually fixed the habits to begin with. And then he decided to test a hypothesis and then told people to just fix the habits, and they never even needed the surgery. But the guy was programmed, because all these doctors are programmed, they are machines, they are robots. They're not humans that are taught to actually work with patients and understand their needs and whatever. No. They are programmed machines that essentially say, hey, for this problem, you're going to do this. For this problem, you're going to perform this surgery. You're going to prescribe this medication and that medication and this thing. They are not taught critical thinking. They are not taught to fix your problem. They are taught to make you a customer for life. All right? Same thing for hair loss. Same thing for everything. All right? So, yeah, this guy essentially exposed the entire scam. And it's the same thing for every single aspect of the industry. Why do you think they're telling you to fear the sun? Right? And to like stay indoors and wear sunscreen, all these different shit, just wear a bunch of toxic, disgusting sludge that permeate through your skin and makes you overall inflamed and fills you with all these carcinogenic substances. Oh yeah, but the sun is dangerous. Well, it's because, one, their products make you unhealthier, so you are likelier to become a customer, and second of all, avoiding the sun is one of the worst things that you can do for your health. Not just for vitamin, and it's not just about vitamin E, it's about the whole full light spectrum. And this is why I despise dermatologists from the bottom of my heart. It's not just about the hair stuff. It's also about the skin stuff. It's also about their obsession, their deep hatred for the sun that has literally been given to us by God as a source of energy, as a source of power, as a source of vitality.
Like this, telling me to stop talking about this topic. This is one of our videos. So our first, one of our first videos on the real cause of hair loss, and it got hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube. And, I was...
Wait, so what was that
got
email?
Hundreds of thousands.
Dear manager, you're gonna get yourself in trouble if you keep posting videos like this. I assume that's what he says. I'll recommend you to stay away from this topic in the future. You've been warned. I mean, that kind of proves that his thesis, that there's something correct to it, right? That the traditional model of what causes hair loss, that, oh yeah, some people are sensitive to DHT and some aren't, and you need to block it, and blah, blah, blah. Which... oh yeah, so it's only the follicles that are in specific areas that are sensitive to DHT somehow for no apparent reason, which now we know is because the muscles that get tense are in the crown area and in the temple area, right? And if that tension is alleviated, then of course you start regrowing hair. And this information, even though I think hairguard's idea is a bit incomplete, even then, that information is technically threatening the business model,
Thousands of views on YouTube. And, I was... They were trying to recommend that I not talk about this topic anymore.
Yeah.
But the question to me is, what are they so afraid of, right?
Right. Like, if we were schizos, just spouting out complete nonsense, he wouldn't be getting threats. He wouldn't be, people wouldn't be trying to silence him if all he was saying about the whole thing about scalp tension was wrong, right?
You know, if you look at the R&D money, it's all going.
Yeah, he's essentially going to talk about how all of the money goes into products that can be sold recurringly to people as a cure that they need, and not using that cure will cause the problem again. And by the way, it's the same thing with shampoo. I talk about it 10 million times on my channel, guys. You need shampoo because you use shampoo. Your hair is disgusting, greasy, shitty because of the shampoo, and you need to go through a phase of transition in order to get rid of that for good, right? Like, normies are still baffled when I tell them what I do with my hair. They're like, oh my god, you've got such amazing hair, you've got the best, most beautiful hair that I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, I literally get comments like this, right? And then I tell them what I do, and some of them, you know, the NPCs that are unreceptive to any kind of ideas outside of their thinking paradigm, always think it's weird, and then they give me arguments as to why it's bad and why, oh my god, that's unsanitary and blah blah blah, and this is bro science. It's like, well, you're the one that acknowledged that my hair is the best you've ever seen, and it's like 10 times better than yours, and you're telling me to follow your advice even though you were in awe. People don't make any sense.
So based on what we learned, there's basically one treatment that stands out above all the others. You can do it at home, it costs nothing, and it has 0 side effects. And this is basically why the hair loss industry hates it. So let's get into this. Scalp massages.
If you're dealing with hair loss and trying to reverse it naturally, you're trying to stack as many tools as possible. So of course I'm for scalp massages, but at the end of the day, reducing the inflammation is the biggest thing that is gonna induce hair regrowth. So basically, you remove the scalp inflammation and then you supercharge yourself from the inside and from the outside via topical nourishment. And that's what leads to regrowth, that's what leads to amazing growth, that's what leads to pristine hair quality, and all that good stuff. But ultimately, this guy has omitted a lot of things, right? So the main thing, obviously, is the hair product usage. A lot of people, they're still stuck in this paradigm that they have to put toxic chemicals in their hair, right? Because that's the normal thing to do, when it literally exacerbates scalp inflammation like nothing else. Same thing with conditioner, same thing with, God forbid if you use hair dye, which is like extremely fucking disgusting. And a lot of people say, oh, but women do that and they don't lose hair. Yeah, because women barely have any DHT, so they don't have that piece of the puzzle that leads to the hair loss cascade. Remember what I said? While DHT doesn't cause hair loss, it's a piece of the equation. If you remove one piece of the equation, then, well, the equation doesn't continue, right? So the reason why women don't lose hair while doing all this terrible stuff with to their hair, which by the way, they still can if they don't have good hair genetics. And you didn't talk about heavy metal toxicity, very, very key component, because as I said, as I've stated before, your hair absorbs a decent amount of minerals in your body. That's why when you do a hair mineral analysis, you can tell what you're deficient in, what you're toxic in, whatever. And essentially, if you're full of like toxic heavy metals, a lot of it come up to your hair follicle cells and results in a lot of very, very targeted inflammation, which results in hair loss. And you kind of also left out the idea of topical nourishment. Now that's more of a fringe idea that is not really that well understood. But basically, you can nourish your scalp, you can nourish your hair, you can nourish even your brain by putting nutrient-dense foods that can actually permeate through the scalp, such as raw eggs, such as all sorts of oils, even spices, just a bunch of different things that can actually nourish your hair directly and even give you brain nourishment, right? Because everything that you put on your skin, especially your scalp, because your scalp spores are actually larger than the pores of the rest of your skin in your body, all of it goes inside of your body transdermally, right? So this allows you to bypass your body's hierarchy of nutritional allocation, because your body, when you eat food, it's obviously going to divert its resources towards your vital organs, towards all of these different important processes, even like building muscle and stuff like that. And your hair is like pretty far down that hierarchy of importance, right? So that's why I also recommend to eat like a very micronutrient rich diet so that you have enough leftover resources to be pumped into your hair. And with topical nourishment, with doing these natural hair masks, you can actually bypass that and nourish your hair directly, right? This is what I've been doing for the past year and a half, and the difference has been night and day.
Study is incredibly expensive. It probably costs like $1 million or more. So why would anyone do a study and spend $1 million when they have zero financial incentive? So if you're waiting...
That is very true, and that is something, if there's anything you can take away from this video, it is what I'm about to say. So there's a lot of things that are true, but there's just a lack of evidence, there's just a lack of studies, of meta-analyses, because guess what? Who gets to publish the papers? Who gets to make these studies? Who gets to gain and make use of that authority? Well, it's the same people that are tied to these exact companies that want to profit off of your suffering, right? Like, that's the issue I have with a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, show me the studies, whatever. It's like, do the things we know now, through empiricism, were they false 100 years ago just because we didn't have the studies to prove them right? No, they weren't, right? Was cholesterol bad when 30 years ago there was a bunch of studies that were done very, very poorly that suggested that cholesterol causes heart disease and that you shouldn't eat more than like 2 eggs a week or whatever? Was that true because that was the scientific evidence at the time? No. There's only one objective truth when it comes to those things. Was cigarette healthy when 50, 60, 70 years ago they pushed ad campaigns where big tobacco paid a shit ton of scientific institutes to make studies linking cigarette to longevity, to virility, to all these different things? Basically, they essentially sold the idea that cigarette is good for you, right? Was that true because the evidence back then suggested it? No, because evidence can be manufactured, and when there is an incentive for something to be done, you can guarantee that it's gonna happen. That's my issue with empiricism. That's my issue with, oh, let's look at the evidence, the papers, like whatever. No. Experiment. Go beyond the fucking paradigm. That's what I've done with this entire journey, and that's what I'm trying to fight against. I am essentially the antithesis to the science-based looksmaxxers, right? I am literally at the complete freaking opposite, because I think the truth lies far beyond empiricism and what the mainstream wants us to believe, right? And a lot of smart guys get caught up onto this trap of just accepting blindly what the medical scientific consensus is, when, well, the consensus was that saturated fat and cholesterol was bad 30 years ago. Now, if you're above 100 IQ, you should know by now that that is completely and utterly false, and it has been debunked. Also, a lot of people, they look at studies, they don't even look at how it was conducted, they don't even understand all of these different cofactors. Like, most studies are done on extremely unhealthy people that are doing everything wrong, that are eating a bunch of garbage, that are not getting enough sunlight, that are slathering their head in shampoo every single day. I'm a big believer in trusting your intuition over the consensus evidence, because when you think about it, even with something as simple as bodybuilding, a lot of things that have been confirmed by studies in the last 20 years is stuff that bodybuilders from the golden era, from even the silver era, were already doing, in terms of diet, in terms of training to failure, in terms of a bunch of different things, right? Some people just developed the right intuitions and did the correct things way before the studies eventually caught up. And sadly, in certain fields, you're never going to get large-scale studies that go against the mainstream paradigm, which fills the pockets of the people running the entire operation. Just like me, you can become your own case study. You can figure things out on your own. You can do your own research. You can always keep an open mind, right? I'm not telling you to believe blindly what I say. That's just what I've done, what has worked for me, what I think can work for a lot of people, but always keep an open mind and try things for yourself. You know, I'm not here to convince everyone. I'm just here for my younger self who would have really, really benefited from the information that I'm putting out now, right? And I know there's a lot of people around that are just like my younger self and could really benefit from it just like he could have. So yeah, that's why I make these videos, and if you're still watching, I really appreciate you. Keep ascending.